This is an interview with Liz Haynes. She is located in Low Canada, Minnesota. I am interviewing her from Eau Claire, Wisconsin. It is 1:38 of April 21st of 2021. Currently, there are 141 million COVID cases in the world with 3 million deaths. In the United States, there have been 31.8 million with 568 deaths or 568,000 deaths. In the state of Wisconsin, there has been 653,000 cases with 7,427 deaths resulting. Okay, so I'll start you with some simple questions and we'll just talk about those and kind of learn about your experiences with COVID and how your life has changed. So could you just start by listing kind of like your ethnicity, your race, and your age?
My mother's family was German, and my father's and Dutch, and my father's family was German and Irish. Oh,
Okay,
and English. Excuse me.
okay. Thank you very much.
So
And
white,
then
white.
do you have a job at the moment or what does your day-to-day life consist of?
I am retired.
How long have you been retired for?
It was as of April 1st. It was 11 years.
Okay. So you were working no jobs at the time of when COVID started?
No, I was not.
Okay. And as we stated, you live in Low Canada, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what's life in like Low Canada like currently? Or what was it
It's
like pre-COVID? If you just want to summarize like kind of like simple day-to-day life back before COVID.
pre-COVID. Both Bob and I are retired, so I was able to go to the community center if I wanted to. We could go shopping. We did a great deal of traveling, and traveling has stopped completely. We're lucky. We've been able to do kind of whatever we want for the last decade pre-COVID.
So I think talking about the travel will be a really important section coming
Okay.
up, but focusing just on like the community center right now,
Yes.
how has that changed? Like, can you go to the community center anymore? Are there shorter class sizes, or have you just decided to refrain from doing it in
No,
general?
I haven't decided to refrain for any of those reasons. I have decided to refrain because I had rotator cuff surgery about 8 weeks ago, and before that, I was recovering from a rare form of cancer. So that kind of kept me out of the loop for a while.
Okay, and then building off of that,
Yes.
so when were you diagnosed with cancer? Was that pre-COVID or was it during COVID?
It was just before COVID. I had surgery to remove a lipoma from my leg February 7th of 2020, and I was diagnosed with spiral sarcoma February 13th of 2020. So just before the shutdown.
Okay, so pre-shutdown, what was your experience like at the hospital and your support system? Were people able to come and support you there? And how did that change after?
They could have come
Hmm.
if I needed to, but the surgery was to remove the lipoma was simple. The diagnosis, Bob came with me to the U, and coincidentally, the U has a sarcoma clinic, and because it's fairly rare, it's unique to the U to have this clinic. So we were able to go to my appointments together to get the gist of treatments and what they would do. I started radiation treatment. The treatment for this cancer was 25 days of radiation, and I started those 11th, 2020, which coincidentally was 2 days after my 70th
Hmm.
birthday. So, good way to celebrate, huh?
And
So,
then when
did
it
I
started
answer that
to
question?
change, did,
Pardon me?
sorry, when it started to change into COVID, did you feel safe still going to the clinics or how did that change? Like, did it add to the stress of trying to kind of deal with your cancer diagnosis?
It added to the stress because I was worried about completing my radiation treatments. I was worried if I got COVID, would I be able to to continue. And when I asked my radiation tech, he said that if I were to be diagnosed with COVID, they would have me as the last appointment for the day, and they would gown up and protect themselves, then have me have radiation. So as it turned out, I have never had COVID, and I didn't have any complications. But yes, it made me feel pretty insecure.
Okay. But do you feel like the hospital adapted to the changes relatively well, according to like all of the kind
Oh,
of fears that were?
I don't know if they whenever I expressed a fear, they addressed it.
Okay.
Oh yeah, don't worry, Liz, we'll figure a way out of it. But I don't know that that helped so much diminishing the stress. But the people at the U and at that radiation clinic were lovely. I mean, they were extremely helpful and very caring, and but it was a matter of going alone.
Hmm.
Bob could have taken me there, but he couldn't have come in to wait for me through the treatment. So it was basically go it alone.
Hmm. And can you kind of expand on like that feeling of going alone if you feel comfortable talking about that? Like, how does that impact someone that's going through this, do you believe, like personally?
Through the radiation treatment, it wasn't so difficult. All radiation did difference. Chemo makes people very sick.
Mhm.
Radiation just made me very tired. So by 2021, I was pretty exhausted, and getting there and home, I was really tired. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was 6 weeks later, I had to have that radiation area removed from my leg, and that was June 1st, and uh, I had to do the whole hospitalization alone. Bob was able to take me to the hospital and pick me up, but I had to go into the surgery myself, and take all the information they gave me after the surgery. And I felt kind of vulnerable because when you come out of surgery, not real, you're not with it. You're still under sedation, and they're trying to tell you things, and they're giving you notes, and they gave me all the information I needed, but there were points that if they had made more clearly, Bob being there would have watched for things that nothing went badly wrong, but a
Mhm.
couple things went wrong. And they made it difficult because I was not aware. And then I looked at the material, and the material said, yes, don't do this.
Yeah.
But it was like real easy, like don't drive a vehicle, don't uncover your wound. I mean, it was no more forceful, the things that went wrong. So I felt more vulnerable than maybe I would have if Bob had been there.
Okay. And then did the hospital like put any support system there? Like, was it just still mainly nurses and doctors, or was there new mediators that they created to kind of facilitate that information?
It was pretty early on. It was June
Mhm.
1st, Nate. So I think it was maybe only 2.5 months into the process. And I made strong indication when I came back that it was unfair to have people go into this type of surgery without someone there to be their support, to someone who was their advocate.
Okay. And then moving out of the hospital into like time back at home, how did
Yep.
that kind of change your like day-to-day life? Like, what kind of hobbies did you develop? Any new hobbies, or was there any like new things you started to find at home that you weren't really doing pre-COVID?
Yeah, the surgery took me solidly to the middle of July before I was kind of back on my
Hmm.
feet. I had, after the surgery, uh, it was very painful. They took a large section of my skin, and the fat underneath it in my leg. out, and it was far more painful than I expected. So I spent a lot of time just immobilized, a lot of time on the couch, a lot of time. I couldn't bathe myself. I really took, Bob had to be responsible to take care of me. Then, after the second week, I went back to see the surgeon and found out that only half of my skin graft had taken.
Mhm.
And when I asked him what to do about that, he said he would suggest I have second surgery. So I had a second surgery June 25th, 22nd, excuse me. The thing that I find interesting is that I went to all of these things alone, and I think typically surgeons don't think to give you the information.
Mhm.
So there were a lot of things that made me anxious, that if they had realized, like I thought that I'd done something wrong, that the skin graft didn't take. Well, it took till 2 weeks after the second surgery before the surgeon's assistant said, "Oh, no, no, lots of skin grafts don't take."
Okay.
So I found that whether it's COVID related or just how surgeons are, I wasn't given information that helped calm me about that this was part of the process and I was doing okay. And I just imagined that it was something to do with the cancer again, and my leg was, something was wrong. So, and knock wood, it wasn't. So I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, of course. And then going like further, like during this time, were there things that you found that could calm you down? You were talking about you kind of like were not completely informed and that like provided a lot of stress on your life. But were there
Yeah.
ways that you kind of dealt with that in like hobbies or like pastimes that kind of gave you that sense of calm that would help kind of during this time?
Truthfully, Nate, I've had two surgeries that were kind of years ago. And I found after this surgery that it knocked my feet out from me, under me enough that I was really not able to do. I was really not, even for a period of maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks, read a magazine or read a book. And truthfully, all I did was recover and have Bob take care of me.
Mhm.
So I hobbies didn't come in until later, and then you know the community center was closed. My leg was uncomfortable. I just didn't do much.
Mhm.
you know
Okay, now I have the opportunity to talk to you almost a year from that moment. Is there
yes.
now things that you feel like you can do with COVID still that you still feel safe and
Okay.
like new
I
things that you've now
Well,
discovered?
Bob and I are both twice vaccinated.
Mhm.
So my last vaccine was March, the last Friday in March. So I'm covered. So now I am starting to. Okay. On what was it, February 25th, I had a rotator cuff surgery. This has been a bad year. I had
Yeah.
rotator cuff surgery, and um, recovering from the leg was simpler. It was more painful, but it made me limp and limited some of my mobility. But this surgery uh, it changed all the things I could do,
Mhm.
because I'm right-handed. Worry about how to dress myself, how to, and Bob had to do a lot of it. So the only thing that I've been starting to be more enthusiastic about again is gardening.
Mhm.
I've started doing a few yoga poses again that are standing, nothing that bears weight on my shoulders or my arms, but I've been able to go out and exciting,
Mhm.
pick up sticks in the yard, pull a few weeds with my left hand. Um, Kind of nothing more than that. They figure you're not mostly recovered from this surgery until about 6 months.
Okay.
So I'm hoping that 2 months from now, I'll be able to kind of like get back in the pool or get back in that lake a little bit
Mhm.
and paddle around and all of that. So yeah, it's been, I have kind of emotionally it's been a struggle, and I've kind of given the whole last year, and I've kind of given up doing a lot of positive things, Nate.
Okay.
I've just whined and recovered.
And then kind of going after or like the positive things, you have kind of gotten more into gardening. Do you think that's
Yeah.
connected with like COVID and like how you've been experiencing life? Or is that just a thing you've been passionate about like your whole life and it just connects
I
then?
not my whole life, but
Mhm.
most of my uh, I would say that I really started gardening in my 40s.
Mhm.
So it's something I'm thrilled about, and it's something I'm looking. I found a gardener who can help me put in gardens this year, so I'm excited about those kind of things.
And then for the gardener, did you find the gardener pre-COVID or did you have to find them during this time period?
Right smack in the middle.
Okay.
I was at Bachman's
Mhm.
on in Maplewood, and I ran into a very cheerful, little, energetic woman who we started talking, and she started offering to, for pay, of course, to
Of
come
course.
out and do some yard work and stuff like that. So I'm quite excited about having her and us building a hosta garden this year,
Mhm.
and you coming over to see it.
Of course. And then going out like off of the vaccination concept, how were your
Yeah.
feelings before you got the vaccine like about it? Were you worried about it? Did you think it was a positive thing or like some like your thought process about the vaccine in general?
I've never feared having the vaccine. I think people who judgmentally, I think that people who overreact and refuse to take them really need to start believing in science.
Mhm.
And I've taken for years. I've taken a flu vaccine every year, uh, whatever they give me, if the doctor suggests it. So I was ready to take the vaccine, and because of the way it was rolled out for the state of Minnesota, lots of people got it before me, and I
Mhm.
kept saying to Bob, well, come on, I had cancer last year. You should be
Mhm.
able to get on the COVID list right away. And it turned out that, as it was, once they scheduled my rotator cuff surgery, they didn't want me to have the COVID shot until a week after this, either a full week before or a full week
Mhm.
after. So as it turned out, I got my first vaccination the first Friday in March, excuse me.
Okay. And then
So
with that, did it feel like kind of a weight was lifted off your shoulder? Like, do you feel like life is a little bit more normal now?
since now, I don't know if it matters that people know that you and I
Mhm.
have been close for
Mhm.
years. Uh, Last week was the first week in 15 months that we had friends over for lunch on Friday, and we played cards. First time in 15 months. My brother and his wife stopped by on their way home from an outing on Saturday and visited to see the things we'd done in the house. And then two of my nieces, the twins, came over Saturday. So in that week, we actually had 6 people in the house, and
Okay.
it's the first time in 15 months. And I guess I haven't told you, I had forgotten. I've also had some things done in the house, things painted, things fixed up. So that's been a nice distraction too through this winter.
Okay. And then going back to the vaccine, I guess, did you have
Sure.
any side effects or any like negative things
The,
after,
the,
or was it worth it in general, do you believe?
well, the first shot was 8 days after my rotator cuff surgery, and I was feeling it was hard because every bump that I hit while he was driving me to the vaccine, hurt, and standing hurt, and by the time I got done with it, I felt crummy. And then 3 weeks later, I had that same day, I had my CT scan, my MRI, my follow up with my cancer surgeon on that Friday before the shot. So by the time I got home, I had a headache and I was tired. I took a nap. Now, whether it was the COVID shot or whether it was too much, too much. I can't tell you, but I never felt feverish or sick to my stomach or anything like that. So I think I came through it without any symptoms.
Okay. And then, so moving off of the vaccine again, and you were talking about how now you have more people in your life being able to come over.
Yeah.
Previously, we talked about like your emphasis on travel. Do you feel like you can
Yeah.
start traveling again, or
Mm.
how did it influence your travel at like pre-COVID, during COVID,
Oh,
and then looking to the future? Like, just let's talk about traveling for a little bit.
let's talk about traveling.
Yeah.
Um, well, Nate, we love to travel.
Hmm.
Uh, we had because of my cancer, which happened February 13th, I was diagnosed. We were scheduled to leave for Thailand about 7 days, 10 days after my cancer diagnosis. So that was canceled because of cancer. Well, Bobby's birthday is in May, and we were scheduled to go to Egypt in May, and that was canceled because of COVID. November, we were scheduled to go to Morocco, and that was canceled because of COVID. Currently, a lot of companies are pushing travel again, but you can't get into Canada. There's lots of places in like Europe that aren't good. So we have a trip scheduled for the Caucasus September, and it makes me a little nervous to think about going there,
Hmm.
but I'm not even sure we'll make it, but I am ready to go for this to be done and to go someplace. And I mean, I think everybody should go to Azerbaijan,
Hmm.
you know. So you should come with us to the Caucasus state instead of finishing school.
Yeah. And then going off of like the cancellation, was it
Yes.
challenging to cancel? Did they cancel themselves, or how is reimbursement, or how is that
We
working?
can
It's kind of
we
different.
canceled we canceled cancer. We canceled Thailand,
Okay.
and we always, because we're old, we always buy insurance,
Hmm.
because then you just lose the insurance. And so all we lost was the cost of the insurance.
Okay.
Now, the Thailand trip, they have taken our money and put it on our trip to Morocco in November. So they just moved our money. Now, the scheduled trip for where else are we scheduled for? We have something in February that they moved. Oh, we're Egypt. We're supposed to go to Egypt in February, and the money from Egypt was moved to Egypt, and then the money from the trip to Morocco was moved to Morocco. So when we go to the Caucasus, if we go, knock wood, in September, we have just a down payment on it now, so we'll have to pay. So they've kept our money and moved the money to the next trip,
Okay.
which is okay with us.
Yeah. Yeah. So that seems so. Without the insurance, you feel like it would have been a lot different, or
The problem is if with trips they allow you to cancel
Mhm.
with an increased loss of money as it gets close. Buy travel insurance, they will reimburse you the whole cost, even if you just decide you don't want to go, except for the cost of the insurance. So since we've been retired, we always buy insurance, Nate. So
And then, so
it's
to like
just
finalize our conversation on travel, are the
just
your planned future trips, are those cheaper than they were previously, or is the cost pretty similar?
pretty similar.
Okay.
pretty similar. And we're talking about maybe I don't know if you know, I have an older sister who lives in California,
Mhm.
and my younger brother Tom and I were talking about making a road trip to see her. So we may be, and if we don't do that, we may be doing a trip also to see a cousin in Florida later this late fall or early winter. But we haven't driven around the country either. I miss going places, Nate.
Mhm.
Heck, Nate, I miss going to Net Lake.
Yeah, of course. It definitely has changed. So, kind of going
Yeah.
off that, did you feel like in the heart you really felt like you had to listen to science and like quarantine and stay at home? Did you buy
Oh yeah.
into that, or
Oh yeah.
was we kind of
Oh
starting to
yeah.
talk about like how that shaped you?
I bought into it about 85, 90%.
Hmm.
Bob bought into it to about 100,
Hmm.
105. Bob, nobody could come here if they weren't wearing a mask. He didn't want anybody in the house. And I'm grateful that he was more adamant than I was about it. So yeah,
And
we've been real sticklers.
okay, and did that like make you feel a little more secure during like all the uncertainty, or is it just kind of?
I don't know if that made me more or less secure. It made me lonelier,
Hmm.
made me feel lonelier. Heck, I haven't gotten to see your parents or you very much through all of this.
And then how was your experience with like going to like get groceries and other stuff when you're trying to like protect yourself? Like, did you go at certain times? Was there a certain like way you would do it? Did you wash your hands a lot, sanitizer, masks, like before masks, just stuff like that?
I can tell you for me, because of cancer, radiation, the
Hmm.
surgery, the recovery from the surgery, then my rotator cuff, I have maybe gone grocery shopping a tenth of the time that Bob has. Bob has taken over most of the responsibility for the grocery shopping. So, and we have hand sanitizers in both cars. When we get to wherever we're going, we make sure if the carts haven't been sanitized or someone's not there to tell us, we sanitize the cart. We wear masks. Because we're retired, we can do it off peak.
Hmm.
He can go shopping at 11 in the morning or 1 in the afternoon, and he does that. I have my outings now are physical therapy. I started physical therapy 4 weeks after my rotator cuff surgery, and I see them twice a week. Now, they've all, because they're medical employees, they've all been vaccinated themselves. So I feel comfortable with them. But yes, they're masked, I'm masked. The room is cleaned before I come in and cleaned after I
Hmm.
leave. So yeah, I have felt safe.
Okay, and then have you had physical therapy prior to this experience?
Yeah. Yeah,
And
I
do you
you
feel like that has there's been like a noticeable change when you walk in to get physical therapy now, like how they work?
Sure. Sure. I had physical therapy after my surgery, and that's when they were beginning to in June. And so, yes, they were wearing masks, but I've had physical therapy with this group before a couple of times. So, you get old, things fall apart. And they've always been very warm and welcoming, and there were often one or two clients in the waiting room. Now nobody sits in the waiting room anymore. You walk in the door, they check you in, and they put you in a room where you're going to have your physical therapy. So you don't. And in the past, if I needed to be on a bike, uh, like when I had my leg done, I did a lot of biking, but they made sure the bike was clean before I sat on it and after, and that no one else was anywhere near me.
Okay.
If there was somebody else on a bike, we did something else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they did a lot to just make sure everybody was fine and okay, you
Okay.
know.
And then we just talked about the ways you were protecting yourselves. What were your feelings about masks in general before like mask mandate? Did you feel like they were like an important factor and you were wearing them before, or did you wait until they were really encouraged?
No, we wore them from the beginning.
Hmm.
I mean, any Fauci and Mike Osterholm and people here that we hear on the news that we're supposed that know stuff said mask, wear it, clean your hands, keep a safe distance. So we tried to do all of those things.
Okay. And then you were
Yeah.
just talking about people that know stuff, and you're at the beginning, you're talking about you kind of struggled to read stuff. How were
Yes.
you getting your information? Was it through like the news? Were you reading
Yeah.
it? And then like kind of like what were some
Mostly,
of your sources?
well, mostly it's the news on television.
Mhm.
I tend to sometimes I tend to watch MSNBC a little more. Anytime Fauci was on, we listened to him, and same with Mike Osterholm. I mean, I think he's a remarkable guy. He's been he's been the Minnesota epidemiologist for years, and I've kind of listened to him for years. So mostly we got our information through television,
Were you
some
getting
NPR.
any information like directly from your doctors when you were going to the hospital, or was it mostly just from like the
If
news?
you, if we were going to the hospital, there was always a pre unless it was just an appointment. But if I was going to surgery, there was pre-op stuff, and also the hospital would contact and say, you have to do this, this, and this before you come in. You have to come by yourself, or not, you have to come in by yourself, but you have to be driven by somebody. So there was a lot of information from the hospital about um, how I could come in, what I needed to do before I was allowed in. Same with the radiation of 25 radiation appointments. You came into the front door, you had to stand 6 feet away from the person in front of you. Then you went to the front and you were met by an intake person who had a plastic shield in front of him and a face mask and plastic shield before, and after you were checked in and your temperature was
Mhm.
taken, then you were sent along. And during this whole experience, starting in December, I also had dental problems.
Mhm.
Also went to the U, and I found those same responses. You have to temperature you before you can come in, and you have to have an appointment before they'll let you even in the building. So yeah.
And then so with most of your medical procedures, was most of it done at the the University of Minnesota, or did you go to other clinics?
um all of my cancer stuff was done at the U. The
Hmm.
intake was there. They had the sarcoma clinic there. So luckily, they were 20 minutes away.
Okay.
But my rotator cuff surgery, I had the MRI and scan on it at Summit Orthopedics
Okay.
in Vadnais Heights. And that's where I had the surgery. And I've had physical therapy at a place called New Heights Performance, which is, I don't know, but it's down 35 east, south a little bit, over 494.
But you'd say
You know,
that all of your experiences were pretty much they had the same procedures of like the plexiglass, the temperatures, and sanitizing. Was there one that was like better than the other, or were they all pretty much seem to implement the same policies?
they did not. They do my procedure at peak appointments. But the women are behind, the receptionists are behind the plexiglass. When they come to take you to your room, they're all masked, and you stay 6 feet apart. But no, I don't. It's only at the U that I've had my temperature taken
Okay.
all the time.
Okay. And then kind of going off like mask mandates and like temperatures, how do you feel like government responded at a state level? Do you feel like they responded adequately, or did you feel like you were confused at some points? Or is there anything you want to add about?
I think Walz did a great job handling Minnesota. I think he was a voice of calm and reason, and I think he did a good job. You know, I'm okay with Walz. Now, if we want to get off on the national level, I think Trump turned a blind eye and made things worse rather than better. But that's certainly all past. You know,
Then going off, sorry, I keep saying going off,
no,
but
sure,
when we're
whatever.
talking about the calming response, do you think
Yep.
that was almost just as important as the policies implemented, just having like a governor or a leader that you could kind of feel like could calm or like you could trust? Was that just as important as the policies that were implemented?
I don't know if they were as important as the
Hmm.
policies, because I think wearing a mask and
Hmm.
closing down businesses and as much upheaval as that created, I think was probably the most important. But it never hurts to have a calm voice saying, uh, stay calm and carry on. I mean, there's nothing wrong with trying to act like Winston Churchill.
Hmm.
Oh, so yeah, I think the fact that we had uh, Governor Walz, and it helped that he wasn't in conflict uh, with the rest of government. So many other states have conflict. I mean, wasn't it Michigan where the state of Michigan went to the brought
Yep.
legislations against the female governor about closing down businesses.
And like
It,
even in
it, it,
Wisconsin, the governor and the legislative and the judicial all were clashing at the same time.
it does, and it doesn't pre- present a united front.
Mhm.
And a united front in a matter of crisis is pretty important, I think.
We just talked about businesses closing. Were you impacted by that, or were you just really just focused on staying home? So restaurants closing didn't really impact you, or do you know anyone that was really impacted by that, like having to
You
like
know,
shut
I
down
don't.
businesses?
I'm lucky enough that I don't know anybody who had lost a job.
Hmm.
Now, I think the closest to me about people who were really impacted by work were your parents.
Hmm.
This whole thing made a big difference in what they could do with their work. I have family members, nieces, nephews, whatever, who've worked from home, been able to work from home. And there were a couple at the beginning who were unemployed until their businesses opened back up.
Hmm.
One of them being my nephew, who is the manager in a dental office.
Okay.
And once they opened dentistry again, he was able to get his shots and go back to work. But knock wood, I don't know a lot of people. I don't know anybody who's been really economically dramatically impacted from this. And in fact, we can't spend money. We can't go out to eat. We can't travel. We end up having a little more money this year than we had 15 months ago. We're saving for our next trips, Nate.
Okay.
We've got our money put away for some of
Mhm.
our next trips. But no, I don't know anybody who, other than changing their lives, not being able to see their children or their grandchildren, I don't, where your social life is altered. I don't know anybody, and you are the only person I know who has had COVID.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask. So you didn't
Yeah,
have any people closely impacted by you that had COVID?
just you.
Okay.
Now, I have a couple of friends said, "Oh, my son has it," or
Mhm.
one of my friends who lives, Patty. I don't know if you've met Patty, but she lives half time in Palm Springs. Her son-in-law got COVID while he was visiting her I can't remember, sometime like May of March, maybe April of last year. And he's one of those, what do they call them? The long timers, where he's been sick and it's taken him months to recover. But personally, you are it, buddy.
That's an accomplishment. Um,
Well, I'm glad you're fully recovered.
yes,
That's the
I am
best.
too. Were there any policies specifically government related in the city of Little Canada that you noticed them going above and beyond? Did you have like was there anything coming out of Little Canada that you felt like, were they
Nothing, no,
talking about it?
no emails, no, nothing in the mail, no, there was no citywide mailing or contacting. No,
Mhm.
I didn't notice anything, you know.
And then I guess one final question related to government. There were some elections throughout the time of
Yes,
COVID. Did
yes,
you feel, did you vote by
yes.
absentee ballot or did you go in person?
We didn't go in person, we did drop off.
Hmm.
So it's not exactly absentee, but we got our ballots and we took it down to the library and in Roseville, and dropped our ballots and voting off there. So yes, we voted. We
If there was
always
no
vote.
COVID, would you have done the same thing or would you have probably just stood in line and done it like normal?
I always stand in line. The only time I've voted this way before is God, one of the elections we were gone somewhere and
Okay.
we had to put an absentee ballot in. But no, we stand in line and do you vote. You
Mhm.
just vote.
And then moving towards the future, because if I would have interviewed you 6 months ago or even a year, it would have been a completely different narrative. So now there's
Yes.
seems to be a little bit more of hope with the vaccine. Is there
Yeah.
anything you want to add about that hope, or we talked about traveling, but anything else you look forward to in the future coming out of this time?
Yes, having people over for lunch, having a post-COVID, post-cancer, uh, see my new gardens, look at my new
Mhm.
tapestry, open house party where we can feed people and hug people, and you can even have a beer at my house now that you're 21. Yeah, uh, I miss the socializing. I'm
Okay.
also I've been thinking seriously of volunteering at Children's Hospital. Well,
Mhm.
can't do that until all of this is settled down. So I'm hoping that get things settled down and start doing some volunteer work.
Okay.
Oh, I'm getting to Net Lake. Good
Yeah.
Lord, going up to the lake and seeing people there, and why would you see? I don't go to the lake because, well, first of all, I haven't been well enough, but it's not like you can visit anybody.
Mhm.
You know, you're just there. So, okay,
And then
next.
one of your brothers lives up towards that area. Did he
Yeah.
kind of reiterate any like changes from like you're closer to like the city, like rural and urban, like how they were impacted differently? Or do you just
Oh, okay, yes, the only thing he has said is that how many people in the we're in a conservative area.
Mhm,
Pine County is where half of the lake is in Pine County, and that voted, I believe they went for Trump.
mhm,
And Carleton County, which is the other half of the lake, went for Biden. And he will talk about the people in Pine County who won't wear a mask.
mhm,
And he just says that he thinks that there's a more conservative bent up there, up near where the lake is, and people just, you know, don't wear masks. I think part of it is for a long time, Nate, people thought they were safe if they lived in South or if they lived up in Cloquet, Minnesota, or up on
mhm.
the Iron Range. It was like they thought they were going to be safe from COVID. And I remember reading, oh, at the beginning of it, or hearing Fauci or Michael Osterholm say,
Mhm.
you know, You guys are safe for now, but when it happens there, it will spread like wildfire there. And that's what it's done. So, I don't understand people who won't wear masks.
Yeah. Were there any other concerns related to COVID that you wanted to bring up, or feel like any other stories or anything you feel like is important to share?
Well, I have a passel of stories, but
Mhm.
nothing specifically COVID, you know.
But you feel like the vaccine will has brought a little more positive mood to the view. Do you feel like with the vaccine
I
we will move out of this sooner than later, or do you feel like there's still going to be a long road ahead or a little bit in between?
I think there'll be a road ahead. And I think what I found really interesting. I was listening to some news report and they talked about 60 Minutes, I think,
Mhm.
had a story about how they are learning to take the virus and within like 6 weeks create, maybe I'm making up time, but within a very short period of time determine what the virus is and determine how to create a vaccine. So they are figuring ways that in the future when we get other uh, pandemics, they will have the knowledge of creating a vaccine or treatment of some sort for that. So I feel heartened by this has forced medicine and science to figure out how to handle something like this in the future.
Yeah. So I know the year has been hard for you specifically and for
Yeah.
everyone else, but going off that, is there like any other bright spot that you see coming out of this, or is it really just centered around science is now like forced to like confront this at a higher rate than they probably would have, and they got probably more funding than they would have without such like
Yeah.
a pandemic?
I think we learned something from it. Now, whether it'll show up in my lifetime or
Mhm.
not, I don't know. You know, you can I hate to sound uh, Pollyanna-ish, but you can take a situation that is difficult and whine, which is a lot of what I did this year with my
Mhm.
cancer and my surgery, or you can figure a way to walk through it with some humor. And I think this is really highlighted for people, you know, turn the light on yourself and you think, well, now how well did I do this? And I didn't do it very well for a lot of things, but what can I learn about it? How do I see myself? And hopefully people can take this experience, myself included,
Mhm.
and use it a little more cheerfully or optimistically.
Yeah, I think that's a very important thing to learn from it, that there's a lot of like human character has been developed through this struggle and not just the
Well,
science.
and I think it's also been pointed out how frail and frightening how frail and frightened some people are from this
Mhm.
experience, and hopefully we learn from it you know
And has it made you more afraid of it happening again sooner, or are you just glad to try and make it through this one? Or are you like, has it become like more like epidemics and pandemics? Has that become more of a topic of discussion or like on your mind than it was previously? Or like,
do you,
has it,
do you remember do you remember when the E. coli was coming out of Africa?
yeah,
Or not
Ebola?
E. coli, Ebola.
Yeah,
Well, they both started with
yeah.
E.
E.
The
coli
Ebola.
has its issues
Yeah.
as well.
Yes, that's true. But Michael Osterholm, and I brought him up 3 or 4 times.
Mhm.
He was the epidemiologist in Minnesota, and he talked about it wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when
Mhm.
there would be another worldwide pandemic. That scared me, kind of scared the hell out of me. But now I think of how much science has learned to create new vaccines in such a limited time span and effective vaccines and how much they've learned about mapping the structure of the pandemic, of the virus. I am somewhat heartened by that. My the, complete aside, and if you want to edit this out, this is fine. My mother was born in 1918,
Hmm.
and that's the year that February of
Yeah.
1918, and that's that year that Spanish flu came along, and she was the third of four children in the family, and her mother nearly died, and her
Yeah.
mother was a young woman, maybe 30, 35 at the time, but she nearly died. And that I remember her talking to me about that. And interesting how similar this pandemic is 100 years later. History repeating
Mm.
itself. My history major friend.
Yeah. So through your own oral history, do you feel like we have made like any like major changes, or do you think it's still very similar to what happened 100 years ago? And like, do you think we
Well,
made any
I,
like better decisions this time around learning from the past, or do you think we kind of repeated a lot
I,
of it?
you know, the things I've seen about it, that in 1918 there were a lot of people in masks, and there were people trying to get out of cities
Mhm.
to get away from get distancing. So it's interesting that keeping clean, staying away, putting on a mask hasn't changed much, but the medicine has changed.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know if they ever came up with a vaccine
Mhm.
or a treatment for that pandemic. And interestingly, Nate, it started in Kansas.
Yeah.
If you go, yep, it started in Kansas with those servicemen who then
Mhm.
went over to World War I. So I always say to Bob, because since he's a Kansan, pandemic started in Kansas. But
Mhm.
so I think the thing that's more optimistic is that we have medical that's much improved, medical treatment and science that's much improved. And
Okay.
hopefully, we won't have another one in my lifetime, Nate.
Hopefully not.
One's been enough.
And
So
then I guess starting to end this conversation, is there anything in your day-to-day life that you feel like you'll change? Like you were talking about bringing people back into your home, but when you go
yeah.
out of your home, is there things you like question touching? Like, do you feel like the sanitizer or like, is there small things that you took for granted previously that you'll kind of do differently?
I think that when we travel, we'll be all wearing masks.
Hmm.
I think that there will be residual mask wearing in this culture.
Okay.
I think because I think it appears that what did I see that said something about 40% of Republican males were not willing to get the
Vaccine.
vaccine,
Yep.
which that's a big percentage of people,
Hmm.
and so I don't know that it'll ever be like smallpox wiped out or me or polio wiped
Hmm.
out, but so we might be wearing masks for a good share of the rest of my life.
Okay.
you know how about you?
Yeah, I think there'll definitely be some like side effects or things that like shake up our culture and start to change the world we live in. And then is there anything else you feel like you want to share before ending this conversation? Because thank you so much for taking time out of your day, and it really
Oh,
means a lot.
well, you can edit this too. Almost any reason to spend an hour on the phone with you works for me. You
Perfect.
do know that.
Yes.
Yes, yes. And
Thank you.
and I hope you're welcome. And I hope to see you sometime this summer at the lake.
Hmm.
Have you had your vaccine?
I
Both
have
of